Today we're going to talk about America's fourth most busiest port, Galveston, Texas, and we are going to give you some tips and tricks when cruising out of there. Plus, I'm going to give you a story that actually happened to us on our last cruise out of Galveston and give you even more reason why you really need to follow these tips and tricks. Stay tuned. Hi everyone, Rob from Cruise Seekers, and today we're going to talk about everything you need to know when cruising out of Galveston. Now, Galveston is becoming one of the most popular cruise ports, and you are going to need to know some things when you cruise out of there. Because if you don't know these things, Galveston's going to cost you three things. It's going to cost you money, it's going to cost you time, and it's going to cost you stress. So if you follow these things, we're going to try to keep those costs to a minimum. And I'm also going to give you a little story about what actually happened to us when we were traveling from our cruise ship out of Galveston back to the airport, and why our little tips helped us so much, because if you didn't follow them, it was going to cost you time, it was going to cost you stress, and it probably would have cost you some money. So sit back and relax and learn all the things you need to know about traveling out of Galveston. But before we get into all this information, I just want to thank everybody who has already become a member of the Cruise Seekers crew. Thank you for subscribing. It's so important to us, and we love you for doing it. And if you haven't become a member of this Cruise Seekers community, think about subscribing. Turn that notification bell on. It's completely free to you. You get great information like this for when you are planning your next cruise vacation. Once again, think about subscribing. Turn that notification bell on so you get notified once we put out new content. Thank you so much. It is very appreciated. And if you're planning a cruise vacation out of Galveston, hey, think about giving this phone number a call down below. We have a lot of knowledge about this port. We have a lot of information that can help you and maybe even save you some money. So if you're planning a new cruise and it's leaving from Galveston or anywhere in the United States, think about calling that phone number. We would love to help you. Thank you. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about how to get to the port and back from the port to the airport, because that's one of the biggest hurdles you're going to have to overcome when you travel to Galveston. So you got two choices when you fly into Houston. You got Houston Hobby and you also have George Bush. So if you were able to pick one of the two, choose Houston Hobby. It is closer to Galveston. It will only take you about 45 minutes to get from the airport to Galveston, Texas. And if you have to fly into George Bush, it's going to take you an extra 30 minutes longer. Also, geographically, it's north of Houston. So God forbid if you're flying in during rush hour time frame and you're going to now have to go through rush hour traffic to get to Galveston, that's another downside about traveling into George Bush. Always understand that when you're flying into there so you can arrange your flights appropriately. Now, getting to the port, you can do that in one of two ways. You can either, of course, do Uber and Lyft. That's great for families because if you don't do Uber or Lyft, you're going to have to take a shuttle, and shuttles buy per person. And when you have 4 people, that number can add up really, really fast. But the good thing about shuttles, that number is kind of set in stone. You don't have to worry about it fluctuating. It makes things a lot easier. When we went recently, we flew into Houston Hobby. It took us about 45 minutes to get down to Galveston, and it cost us around $92 to take a Lyft XL from Houston down to Galveston. Add in the tip for that, so we're now talking about $110 or somewhere around that range. I can't remember exactly. It was around $110, $115 after the 20% tip. So again, not too bad. Now, getting back from the cruise port to your airport can be tricky taking Uber and Lyft because there's like 6 to 8 to 10,000 people trying to get rides back to the airport. And, you know, Galveston's a small island and it's not going to be fun waiting for a ride with Uber and Lyft. It's going to take some time. You also might see some surge pricing there too, so it could be really expensive as well. The other thing you also have to remember with Uber and Lyft when you're traveling from the port is a lot of those drivers can't actually pick you up right at the port. You might have to go to a staging location and, you know, basically roll your luggage to that staging location. And if you have a lot of luggage and not a lot of hands, that could be a troublesome hassle. Now, what you can do in order to avoid that is definitely think about taking that cruise line shuttle. You know, again, that price is kind of stable, not fluctuating. You know how much it's going to cost, and you know you're going to get there. The other option that I would recommend too is maybe looking at a third-party type of taxi service that you can schedule ahead of time, because then you can have that person waiting for you when you get there, and they usually have the ability to pick you up straight at the port. I'm going to give you a name of a taxi service that we used when we were leaving Galveston. They were perfect. They were there for us when we got there. We had to wait a little bit because Galveston has just a lot of traffic when people are leaving the port. It just gets really congested. You know, this cruise port is just growing, and the infrastructure that the city of Galveston has for when people are leaving the ship is not the best. So it does take time to kind of get picked up, even if you have one scheduled. Now, if you're driving into Galveston, Texas from your home, well, you don't have to worry about the stress of, getting from an airport back to the port and back and forth. That type of stuff goes away. But the stress you get to worry about is, where the heck am I going to park my car? Now, if you're traveling on Royal Caribbean, you're in luck. There's a lot of parking over by the new Royal Caribbean terminal. Now, if you happen to be not traveling with Royal Caribbean, well, you're in for a little bit more of a, I guess you can call it a treat, right? Because there's a little less parking in those areas where those terminals are, and you're going to just have to say, oh, this parking lot's full, and just kind of ride around until you find one that is not full. Now, the other option you have if you're driving is if you're going to come in a day earlier and you're going to stay in Galveston, think about trying to find a hotel that offers like a cruiser package. Now, a cruiser package will allow you to stay at the hotel for that night, allow you to leave your car on their property during the week that you're gone. It's included in your rate, and they will get you to and from the port. So that's a nice option to do. And then you don't have to worry about trying to find a spot to park your car. And that gives me a really nice segue into the next section of this video, and that is, where the heck do I stay when I'm going to Galveston, Texas for a cruise? Now, Galveston, being a resort type of town, it's just a place that people go to vacation, folks. It's going to cost you a pretty penny for a hotel room. There's 3 different kind of main locations in Galveston, Texas. You have the area right by the port. Those hotels there are great and very easy to get to the port from. You can even walk there with your luggage to get on your ship. But it's going to cost you some money. The other option that you have is to go about a mile south over to the area that they call the seawall. Now, the seawall is a little bit more of a distance to get to the port. You're not going to be able to walk from it. So you're going to need a taxi or some sort of shuttle service to get you from your hotel to the port. Now, there are some hotels on the seawall that does have that service to get you from the hotel to the port. Seawall is also pretty cool too, because you do have a lot of night activity there. There's a whole bunch of restaurants. Not that there's not a lot of restaurants over by the port, but there's just a more of a vacation vibe over by the seawall. You also have the evening time activities. You can go to Pleasure Pier. You can just have a great time over at the beach if you're there early, or maybe 2 days early. You could be right on the Gulf of Mexico right there too. So those are nice options for the seawall. Now, the third location where you can stay is in what they call the convention area. That is also on the seawall, but it's a little further west on the seawall. Actually, it's a little more than a little further. It's about a good 1.5 miles further west from the area where Pleasure Pier is. Now, over there, you're going to find the cheapest hotels, but on the flip side, those hotels usually are not going to have a shuttle service to the port location, so you're going to need to kind of arrange, how am I going to get from my hotel to the port when you're staying in that area. And when you're dealing with cruise day, you got a lot of people coming off of ships, right? So you got to compete with those people in getting an Uber or Lyft, and you are now in a hotel that you need a ride to go to the port. And you might have to wait a long time to get from there to the port trying to grab an Uber or Lyft. So if you decide to take this third option, if you decide to stay in the convention area, I would also recommend here hiring a private taxi to get you from the hotel to the port. The person that I talked about for the private taxi about getting from the port to the airport, they also do this service too. They will pick you up from your hotel and bring you to the port. Again, it's a flat fee. It's usually around $30 from the convention area. And it's just a nice way to kind of do it and not deal with the stress. You don't have to worry about, oh, how long is this ride going to be? You know, your ride's going to be there at X time and you're going to be at the port at Y time. For the people that I use, again, you just look up in the description below and you can just take a look at them. For us, it was definitely worth it. Now, the other fourth option, I would call it, not the most ideal option, but the fourth option that will save you some money, definitely will save you some money, and will give you the ability to pick up Ubers and Lyfts a lot easier than if you stayed on Galveston. That fourth option is not staying on Galveston. There's a couple of different types of towns just north of Galveston that you can stay. You have Texas City. There's a whole bunch of hotels there. There's also some other towns in that area too that you can jump on, and you could probably find hotels there at about 50% less cost than if you were to stay on Galveston Island. So yeah, that's a good way to save some money. It's also a good way to save some stress if if finding a Uber or Lyft to get you to the port is stressful for you, it's a nice option. Now, the one thing that's really great about staying on Galveston Island is that if you do, you're going to have some really good dining options, especially if you're a seafood aficionado. But being a resort community, that means it's going to be a little bit pricey. You're just going to have to factor that in, folks. Yeah, you can go to some of the cheaper locations. We found some really, really good little cheap eat locations over by the convention area where we stayed. We found a great little Chinese food place. We went to go to a typical, place that a lot of people go to in Galveston for dinner with seafood. It was called The Spot. It was pretty darn good, but again, it was pricey. We actually found over by the convention area a place for dinner the night before we went to The Spot that was actually better tasting than The Spot and a little cheaper overall. So yeah, the further you get away from, Pleasure Pier and that kind of very touristy area, the prices go a little bit further down. And of course, the drawback, if you stayed off of Galveston, say that you stayed in, wherever it might be, say Texas City, your hotel might not be anywhere near walking distance to get something to eat. You might have to either jump on an Uber or Lyft, get to a place to get something to eat, or you might think about DoorDash to bring it in. There's a couple different options, but that's the drawback of not staying directly on Galveston. And some final tips here. If you're staying in a hotel before your cruise, think about doing it at least 2 days ahead of time. The reason why I say 2 days ahead of time, Galveston's a resort island. There's a lot of things to do. You can have a nice beach day over by the seawall. You can go to Pleasure Pier at night. You can do some sort of like Segway ride. You can go fishing. You can do a paranormal experience ghost hunting tour. There's a lot of cool things you can do over in Galveston. The other recommendation is don't plan a flight leaving Houston anywhere before 1 p.m. 1 p.m. is usually the area that I tell people after that point, you're good. But before that time, you might run into problems. Galveston is notorious for fog during the wintertime, so you might have some delays there. And I'm also going to tell you a little story next, what happened on our cruise, what caused us to be late getting off our ship. And if I was planning a flight right when I got off the ship, I would have probably missed it if I tried to plan it anywhere before 1 p.m. And even 1 p.m. might have been tight. But the good thing was, I have another tip. Try to stay at a hotel by your airport when you get off your cruise ship, because then you don't have to run up to the airport and make a flight. You now have a nice leisurely trip up to a hotel versus trying to make a flight from a connection that you're not 100% sure of when you're going to get there. And now it's the funny story time, like I promised you. So when we were getting off our cruise ship, we were getting ready to, just relax, have a nice leisurely trip up to our hotel before our flight the next day. And we were planning to get off the ship last. It didn't really matter to us. But other people, they had to make a flight. And we were just sitting, waiting for us to get ready to get off the ship. And we were just waiting. And we were waiting. And we were waiting. And now we missed the first disembarkation for people by about 15 minutes. Then it was 30 minutes. Then it was 45 minutes. And we were getting announcements saying, please do not wait by the disembarkation location. We're not cleared yet. We can't go just yet. It was just, we were all wondering what the heck's going on here. Well, what was going on is we had a passenger who was going to have an escort off the ship. Basically, once he got off the ship and cleared customs, there were some police officers waiting for him. But he caught wind of this, so he decided, in his great wisdom, to jump off the ship. Well, he tried to make a swim for it, but it didn't really work. I'm going to show you some video of what exactly transpired, but it was quite amazing. And we were delayed getting off that ship by a good hour and a half. And if I had to make a flight for like 1 o'clock, it would have been tight. If I had to make a flight for 12 noon, I wasn't going to make it. I was just really happy that I listened to my tips. I didn't have a flight for that day. I was just going up to a hotel nearby my airport, and that's all it was going to be. And you know what? There was also a major accident on the way up to Houston too. So again, definitely listen to these tips. Definitely, if you can afford it and you can do it with your time, stay that extra day after your cruise ship. There's no reason to stress. Just do that and you'll have a great time and you'll relax and you won't have to worry about making a flight. Do that. It's a long distance from Galveston to the airports. Just get rid of all the stress. Do those tips. You'll be happy you did. So there you go, folks. That's our tips and tricks if you're taking a cruise out of Galveston, Texas. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. It really does help the YouTube algorithm, and it does help other Galveston travelers find this video. If you have any questions at all about traveling out of Galveston, leave them down below. We love comments and we always answer to them. And if you traveled out of Galveston, let us know your experience of traveling to and from the port, everything about Galveston that you liked or disliked. Leave those comments down below. Let's get the conversation going. And one more time, if you have not become a member of the Cruise Seekers crew, think about subscribing, turn that notification bell on. Thank you so much. It's very appreciated. And if you are planning a cruise, please give us a call. I'll throw up that phone number again right down there below. Or you can just click the link down below. That will send you to a form. Fill out the information about the cruise you're looking for, and we will get back to you and help you plan a great vacation. Another way you can get to that same form is I will put a QR code right there. You can scan that QR code, fill out the form. We'll get back to you. We'll plan your vacation for you on a cruise, and you will have a great time, and you will not have to worry or stress. So until we talk again next time, this is Rob from Cruise Seekers reminding each and every one of you to always seek the seas. Bye now.